FY2022-23. My name is Nhlanhla Pumete. I'm the full-time member of the regulator, primarily responsible for electricity regulation. I'll be the chairperson of this public hearing, but I'd also like to introduce my other panel members who are members of the ELS. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Advocate Nomalanga Sithole, who is the Chief Executive Officer at NERSA and is the member of the ELS. Welcome, Madam. You are on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was saying thank you, Chair. Good morning to everyone present on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate. I would also like to introduce Mr. Muzi Mkhize, who is a full-time member of the regulator, who is primarily responsible for petroleum pipelines regulation, who is also the member of the ELS. Mr. Mkhize.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to yourself, fellow panel members, as well as all the attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. I'd also like to introduce the last member of the ELS who is here present, Mr. Fungai Sibanda, who is a part-time member of the regulator, but is also the member of the electricity subcommittee. Mr. Sibanda, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. This public hearing was duly advertised in the following national newspapers. It was advertised on the National Independent on the 10th of June 2022, in the Sunday Times, Business Day, and Sowetan on the 9th and the 12th of June 2022, and the Beard on the 9th of June. It was also posted on our website. This hearing is held in terms of Section 10 of the National Energy Regulator Act, in which all affected parties are given an opportunity to submit their views and present relevant facts and evidence to the energy regulator. This is a data and information gathering session, and hence the energy regulator will not be responding to any questions nor making any decisions in this meeting. We are here to listen and to ask questions of clarity on the input that may have been provided, and we are only really here to seek to understand your inputs. We are not here to judge your inputs either. We also like to request that even if some members of the public may disagree with any of the inputs being provided by any of the stakeholders, that in terms of our constitutional, everybody has got a constitutional right to be heard, and therefore we should afford everybody an opportunity to express their views unhindered, and would really request that people be given an opportunity to express their views without being disturbed. This hearing is governed by NERSA rules on public hearings, which can be summarized as follows. All parties will be required to make their presentations under oath. The presenters will be allocated 15 minutes each, and only the members of the panel that have been introduced to you may ask questions to the presenters. However, members of the public may forward their questions to eliezer.lamini@nersa.org.za, as is always the practice, and the panel will decide on how to deal with those questions. Should the presenters wish to present information they consider confidential, the panel will make a ruling on whether to close the hearing or to have the information submitted in writing. The recording of this hearing will be done through our recording system, and this will also serve. There will also be a live audio streaming on NERSA Twitter page at NERSA_ZA, and the recording that we will be making in our recording system will be the official record of this meeting. House rules. We just request that when we are speaking, to please switch to switch your cell phone to silent. But we request that everybody else to please ensure that your microphones and your videos are switched off at all times, unless you are making a presentation. And we request that the chat, which is open, that it be used responsibly to contribute to a meaningful discussion at this public hearing. We have 5 presenters today at this public hearing, and as indicated, each presenter will be given 15 minutes. The presenters would be Mr. Gary Michael Ross, who's going to be representing the City of Cape Town. The second presenter would be Mr. Kevin Carolas, representing Stellenbosch Municipality. Thirdly would be Mr. Kagiso Lerutla, representing the City of Ekurhuleni. Number 4 would be Mr. William Mars, jointly with Mr. Pierre van der Heever, representing Wittenberg Municipality. And lastly would be Mr. Mario Nyangitaka, who is a Tembisa resident. So we will start off with the City of Cape Town. Mr. Gary Michael Ross, if we can see you, please, sir, for the swearing.
Chair, if I can indicate, it's Dr. Lesring Conte here, the Director of Electricity Services in the City of Cape Town. The presentation will be done by our Finance Manager, Mr. Donovan Lewandal. I don't know if you would want both of us to take the oath, so that I can respond to any questions which may arise during or after the presentation.
I think it's optimal if you both can be sworn in. You're welcome. So I did, but can I see your faces, please? If you can switch on your videos. Just for the swearing, you can then switch them back off afterwards. So at least we know who we are talking to.
There, you should see me now, I hope.
I do see you. Firstly, can I just get an understanding? Have you got any objections to taking an oath?
No, I do not.
All right. In that particular case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence and the information you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, the organization that you are representing, and your designation therein, please.
My name is Dr. Lesring Conte. I'm from the City of Cape Town. And I'm the Director of Electricity Generation and Development in the city.
Thank you, sir. Can we get the second presenter also for swearing in?
Good morning, Chair. It's Donovan Lewandal. I hope you can see my camera.
Not yet. I can see the camera, but I can't see you.
Okay, give me a second. Any better?
It's actually very dark, completely dark. It's like, I don't know. IT, any guidance? The matter?
I'm not sure if it's a setting when I possibly logged in, but the camera is enabled on my side.
Okay.
Excuse me? Yeah, this computer doesn't have a sleeve or whatever you call it that does it. And the light is certainly on, indicating that the camera is on.
Okay, for expediency, can we still proceed? We can't see you for the record, but it's okay. You can keep trying. Do you object to taking an oath?
I do not.
In that case, can you affirm the following? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence or the information you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, the organization you are representing, and your designation therein, please.
My name is Donovan Lewandal. I work for the City of Cape Town. and I'm the finance manager for the Energy Directorate.
Thank you. Thank you, Donovan. I assume you are the one that's making a presentation as indicated by Dr. Lesman?
That's correct.
All right. If you can proceed, I do hope that your presentation will be visible, though, if you are, because you are not. But let's see you. Let's see whether we can see your presentation, and then we can start your 15 minutes.
Will somebody from your side be presenting? I don't think I have the option on my side.
Mr. Mateja, can you assist him to give him an option to share? Or, because we do have the presentation, you can actually maybe drive it on our side as well. Mr. Mateja?
Okay, I'm trying to present now. The option has just come up.
Okay, it's up here. So you've got your 15 minutes there, and your 15 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks for the opportunity. Let's just stick straight into it. If we look at the operating budget for the city from an electricity perspective, and we're all aware of the 8.61 ESCOM increase and what it effectively means for the city of Cape Town, and we do kind of flip between regulated and unregulated.
Donovan, sorry to interject. Do you mind putting it on presentation mode so it can be slightly bigger? If you can put it, thank you. Thank you.
Right, thanks. So yes, what it essentially equates to from the city perspective is 9.5% in terms of the average tariff increases. And I will flip between regulated and unregulated. I know this is very much the regulated space, so it does help to explain things. So yeah, just indicating there over the last number of years as well, city increases versus ESCOM increases that have been applied to us. What we do note, and I will show a graph on that later, is the projected system growth, which has been consistently in the order of negative 1.5%.
Can I request those that may be to please everybody to put themselves on mute, please, as a respect to the presenter. Please proceed, Donovan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Moving on to the next slide. Okay. Sorry, I forgot I was driving it there for a second. So what we're showing here is the 21-22 original budget, as well as the 22-23 budget. And essentially what you can see in terms of the year-on-year growth of the bottom line, it's a 10% increase in terms of rand value, in terms of the revenue requirements from tariffs. So what we're talking about here is the rand increase. We go through a process of estimating what revenue and expense we will look at in the following financial year, as well as looking at the 21-22 revised base, so that we can calculate what our tariff increase is going to be, looking at growth specifically as well, which, as I've indicated, in the order of 1.5% negative. Okay. If we look at the 21-22 and where we project to be, even though we are currently over-recovering in terms of our sales and in terms of where we had expected to be, we obviously have a similar increase in the bulk purchases for the 22 financial year, 21-22 financial year. And that's in the order of about 272 million. And we use this revised base looking at our energy sales as well, in order to come in with a rand revenue increase in the order of just shy of 8%. So we're not talking tariffs here, we're talking the actual increase in terms of the revenue that we expect. So just the graph I spoke about in terms of the last 12 years, just the consistent decline in our energy kilowatt hours that is being sold across our various customer categories. And we are projecting that 272 million increase for the current year, which is the first little bit of red line going up. Obviously, 2021 was an unusual year, so a significant dip in terms of what we had expected. And then we are again projecting that negative 1.5 going forward. So what does this actually mean for the tariff increase? And what we're saying is that the NERSA guideline, which is in the order of 7.47, makes no mention of sales, so kilowatt hours, reducing or otherwise increasing. And this makes this a revenue requirement increase and not a tariff increase. So that's in the order of 7.47%. If we take the City of Cape Town and our application, we look at our regulated revenue projected from sales, and that is what, as I indicated, what we're projecting for the current year. It's not what the tariffs were designed for in terms of revenue recovery, because the kilowatt hours do change. So we take that first adjustment into account. Then we look at what our revenue requirement is for 2022, 2023, and that's in the order of an 8% in terms of the revenue required. We then take this negative 1.5% into account from the kilowatt hours again that we are projecting or expecting for the current financial year, and adjust it downwards in terms of the graph for the 22-23 financial year. That then essentially brings us in with an average.
Mr. Matiafa, if you can assist us, please, with whoever it is.
Thank you.
Apologies, Donovan.
Problem. So that then brings our average tariff increase in the order of 9.6%, which is our actual application to NERSA. And as I've indicated, the main reason for that is this negative growth that we are seeing. So if we just look at the 8%, the difference between the 8% there and the 7.47, in reality, the city is actually only asking for 0.5% above the guideline increase from a revenue requirement perspective, because the guideline does not take into account this reality which municipalities face of negative growth. Okay, and what we're also saying is that this mechanism taking into account this negative growth is used in ESCOM application, or it's a consideration by NERSA that was applied to the ESCOM application, and we ask that this also needs to be taken into account from a municipal perspective. It is our reality. So what is actually driving our increase? And the next two slides are essentially the same, and they just set out slightly differently. But number one is our reduced sales volumes in the order of 1.5%. Our collection ratio, which is a positive, not a negative, moving from 98.5 to 99%. A reduction in some of the support services costs, or limiting those costs in terms of other services provided by the city. We also have an ESCOM new intake point, which is going to cost us 44 million rand for the next 3 financial years. Then we also have security and safety concerns for our personnel. And we require 40 million rand for both safeguarding our network as well as our field staff. The other reality we have is also the employee-related costs, where the wage award for 21-22 in the order of 3.5% was not taken into account with our previous application. And so with that award coming through, I think it was January or so of this year, we do have a doubling up of that cost now as well. Then there's also just a smaller reduction in our contribution to our CRR, which just assists us with some of that ESCOM connection fees as well. So just to put it in a little bit more rands and cents terms, we have a revenue increase applied, which is 8%. If we apply the 7.47% in terms of the guideline, essentially it results in a shortfall of 71.5. And if we add all of those items that I've indicated on the previous slides, that's 44 million for the bulk, 40 million for the safety and security, 48 million for the correction of the employee-related costs, and then offset against the 35 and the 24 for the bad debts and the CRR. That brings us to 73 million in terms of the additional revenue requirement, which speaks directly to the 71.5% million shortfall that we have in the application. If we look at it from a budget kind of subjective category, you can see the yellow line, the bulk purchases by far being the biggest driver of our increase. Also the employee-related costs, 0.7%. And this is just an allocation of the 9.5% across the different categories and what's actually driving that. There are items like the bad debts I mentioned, the connection fees, the contribution to CRR. As I've indicated before, this is, for example, includes the unregulated, which is the contribution to rates of 0.9. But yeah, that's just for explanation purposes. And then the last slide I have is also, again, just showing the lion's share of our bulk purchases in terms of what's driving our costs. And you can see how that's grown over the last number of years. Then also just showing, obviously, the contribution to rates going up of the same order because it works on averages. The bad debts provision, in terms of how we've actually reduced that in terms of trying to reduce our tariff increase. And you can see the 145 to 110 and the capital charges in yellow, as well as all our other non-trading costs, which is the salaries and wages, general expenses and repairs and maintenance. That's all from my side. Jefferson, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Donovan, for giving us time back. You gave us 3 minutes back. So now it's over to the members of the panel to ask questions on the City of Cape Town. If I can see members by show of hands, questions to the presenters. Start with the first question would be Mr. Mkiza, and then Mr. Mkiza, if you can go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks, Mr. to Donovan, Dr. Lesnan, for the presentation. I would just like to, first of all, to start off by saying that when we're busy with the ESCOM application, City of Cape Town is quoted in various platforms, including the mass media, where the mayor actually was saying that it is totally unaffordable, unfair, and will do profound damage to our economy and families here in Cape Town. Mayor Gordon Hill-Lewis said on the DA Twitter account, say that an increase should be kept at or below the inflation rate of 5.5% because ESCOM has had huge tariff hikes in recent years, and the utility should offer relief instead of raising prices. That's what the mayor said there. So I would like to know then, does it then make it different when it is done by the City of Cape Town? For them now to ask for an increase that is above the guideline being 9.6%. And then when it comes to the issue of declining sales that you are highlighting throughout, is that in terms of us looking at the guideline and having also consultations thereon, it's clear that it's not catering for this declining sales. Why then bring it over now? And my understanding is that we're regulating tariffs here. Are you then suggesting that there be regulation of the revenue requirement and not simply the tariff? Just want to get that clarity from my side. And then my understanding was that we always prefer that there be a cost of supply study that is done for this above guideline increase application. I would just like to know then, because it seems like there is a cost of supply study that you sent I think the latest was yesterday. Is this then based on that? Because we know that also the cost of supply study should be submitted at least 3 to 6 months before the regulator for consideration. You also indicating that there's a projected revenue increase of about 7.97, but on your slide 5, you say over 12 years you have experienced a decline of 1.5 in actual energy sent through. So then that makes it just slightly 0.5% above guideline increase, because you say the guideline does not take the reality of negative growth. My question is, if that 5.5% is small, why can't it be done the other way around to say offer your citizens an opportunity, your community there in Cape Town, an opportunity to then not be overstretched under these tough economic conditions, instead of having the 0.5% and let go of it. I would just also lastly, I would like to ask, in terms of your slide 9, just to include the issues that the elements that are within the regulation of NERSA, and to eliminate those that aren't, so that one can maybe have a better picture as to what they're actually increasing. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nkiza. Mr. Sibanda?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Donovan. Chairperson, perhaps from my side, so to the extent that there are special projects that the city intends undertaking, just want to find out, have you submitted project plans to support such projects? And then secondly, the additional revenue that you are requesting, can you confirm that if granted, that will be ring-fenced and used solely for the intended or for the identified projects or the intended uses? And then you highlighted as one of the drivers for the tariff increases the lower sales. Now, you will be aware of the debates, previous debates around the utility debt spiral. So now the question is it not these kinds of above guideline tariff increases that are actually driving lower sales, as opposed to lower sales resulting in higher tariffs? If you can just give me your thoughts on that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. I think I see a third hand. Unless you will be given opportunity to respond. So you don't need to raise your hand, sir. You will respond, Doc. Can I, Donovan? My questions are not going to be very different from my colleagues. They are similar, if you like, but perhaps just a little nuanced differently. You know, based on slide 9, again, as the question that was asked by Mr. Sibanda around the utility debt spiral, the question that I ask is that if you're looking at declining sales, do you consider that it is a correct response to increase prices? When you've got a sales in any business and the sales are declining, do you think it's proper to respond by increasing prices? So that is the first question, linked to your slide 5. And again, linked to your slide 5, linked to that question. I mean, for me, the question is it seems what you are saying is that some people are living and providing their own electricity or moving off the grid or whatever, or actually moving out of Cape Town or wherever that they're going, which is where the declining sales will be coming from, I would assume. Or businesses are shutting down, or whatever the actual reason might be. Are you not punishing? If you are increasing tariffs, and this is a question that we posed to Eskom as well, by the way, so it's not just a question posed to yourself. Are you not punishing your remaining customers? So those that are staying behind, is it fair to then increase their tariffs to get more revenue? So that is the second is linked to your slide 5 in terms of the utility debt spiral definition. And maybe you can even comment on that, whether you don't see that in this particular case. Is that relevant in this case, where as the sales decline, you increase the price, but as you increase the price, the sales will decline further. And as the sales decline further, you want to increase the price and you go into that spiral. Based on slide 6, and again, this is the question asked by Mr. Mkhize, but I'm going to ask it slightly differently. That if you can assist us in terms of your understanding of the Electricity Regulation Act, does NERSA actually regulate municipal tariffs, or does it regulate municipal revenues? If you can maybe just assist us on that, just based on your reading of the law, what is your understanding? My last question, again, is linked to questions asked around the cost of supply, but my question is a more direct one that says, are Cape Town electricity costs ring-fenced? So is that business totally ring-fenced as it is meant in terms of the Act, that the electricity business should be ring-fenced? That, for instance, when we make reference to personnel cost of 1.4 billion rands, will those 1.4 billion rands be costs related to your specifically to the personnel that is running that your electricity division? So those are our questions to both yourselves. If we can give you 10 or so minutes to respond, you do have an option to also still submit in writing any responses of clarity, if maybe you feel you have not done justice in terms of responding to the questions, so that it can assist with the evaluation of your application. If we can give you some 10 minutes until, say, 9:45, please, to respond to the questions. Thank you. Over to both yourselves, sirs.
Right, Chair, if it's Dr. Nkonti here, if I may begin to respond to some of the questions, and I'll leave Donovan to respond to the others. Starting off with the first question in terms of the Mayor's statement with regard to the impact on citizens. I think that any increase in the bulk price is translated to an increase to citizens of the municipality. And obviously, the lower the increase in the bulk price, the lower the impact is going to be on citizens. I think both from an Eskom as well as a municipal perspective, there's a responsibility to ensure that the businesses do remain financially sustainable. And that unfortunately does mean that price increases need to be passed on and recovered from citizens. Obviously, the lower the increases that we see, the lower the increases that our citizens will see. I also just want to pick up on the question with regard to the 0.5%. And Donovan has explained, it's on one of the slides. There are 5 particular issues, or 3 issues, which are essentially driving us over that guideline from a revenue perspective. That's the bulk intake point of 44 million rand. This is a payment which would be made to Eskom for connection to a new bulk intake point, which is critical for the city in terms of security of supply and meeting the ongoing demand in the southeast component of the metro, which is the poorer section of the metro in which we want to ensure that there is development happening. So that is a once-off cost, which has been spread over a 3-year period to try and smooth the impact. Unfortunately, it has to be an operating expense and not a capital expense, because the intake point will be owned by Eskom. The additional 40 million rand for security, I think all municipalities are facing, and Eskom distribution are facing, unmitigated levels of vandalism and theft of infrastructure, as well as attacks on our own staff. And this additional amount is absolutely vital to ensure security for our staff members, as well as for security for our infrastructure. And the last item, in the previous financial year, we had not budgeted for an increase for staff costs, and the staff costs are only electricity staff costs. The staff costs are absolutely ring-fenced, but Donovan can cover that question a bit later. And we are now having to bring that cost back in order to ensure that the budget does relate to the actual expenses. In order to try and mitigate these impacts, we have lowered the provision for bad debt. It's the 35 million rand, so that's a saving which we've implemented. And we've also decreased our contribution to the CRR. Once we have concluded the payments for the Eskom bulk intake point, we would want to then move that contribution to the CRR back to its normal level. But we have recognized that we need to try and limit the impact. And so in terms of that 0.5%, as you can see here, we have already tried to limit it by making savings in other areas. The last issue which I wanted to pick up is the issue around the death spiral. I think in terms of the death spiral, there's both push and pull factors. I think what we are seeing in terms of load shedding and the disruption to supply in many cases is pushing a number of consumers to consider alternate approaches, particularly own generation, which now has become a lot more affordable because of the advances in technology and the reduced prices that have come from that. I think the solution to this from a utility perspective is to get our pricing right. We need to charge for the actual costs which are being recovered. And I think to a large extent, and I mean, the city has embarked on implementing a cost of supply study for a number of years now, trying to get that correct. But while our pricing is incorrect, we are going to be charging people inappropriately. So I think in many respects, what we need to do is we need to pass on the cost of generation, and I think what we are seeing is that the cost of generation is increasing. I'm talking about generation from Eskom, is increasing far greater than inflation, and it's part of the reason why the city is also trying to look at diversifying its supply, so that we can start adding in renewable and other sources of energy that are not going to have the same price trajectory or cost trajectory that we are currently seeing from Eskom. I think what has been a very big concern in the city side is that as your more affluent consumers install own generation, that undermines our ability to provide subsidies to our poorer consumers, and it's absolutely vital that we in fact try and retain those subsidies so that we don't see the poor suffering because of this migration away from or migration towards own generation. Lastly, I think there was a technical question which you asked around the role of NERSA in terms of regulating revenues or tariffs. I mean, obviously, the tariffs have to be derived from the revenues. I think the traditional methodology around tariff design and cost of supply study takes costs into account. And regulating tariffs very much has to look at what the actual costs within the utility are, and the tariffs determine what the revenue is to cover those costs. So although I think the legislation does talk specifically about the regulation of tariffs, that would by default require that the costs within the municipality as well as the revenue needs to be considered. Over to you, Donovan.
Thank you, Les. You've answered quite a number of the questions. So just from the cost of supply study, we've gone through a number of iterations of our model. We've actually also engaged with some consultants that are working with National Treasury and NERSA, I believe, in terms of a standardized cost of supply model. And from where Gary and I are sitting, we do believe that our model aligns very closely with theirs. There might be some technical issues that we still need to resolve on our side. One of our big sticking points previously was around the NMDs, notified maximum demands, and the allocation of demand. And we've gone through an exercise with revised allocation, which actually has swung the numbers quite substantially from what we had previously in terms of cross-subsidization that we had seen, although it's still in the same area, just the extent thereof has changed. And I think just looking at the current slide here, just in terms of what is happening in some of our customer categories, we're seeing growth, for example, in the Lifeline of 9%. We're seeing growth in the small power user 1 and the small power user 2. These are three categories, for example, where there is considerable cross-subsidization. And us actually selling more to these customers actually means there's more cross-subsidization that's required from other customers. And that's part of our dilemma, if I can call it that, in terms of our cross-subsidization model that we have, and why cost-reflective tariffs are so important. If we're talking cost reflectivity, then the home user on our residential side is far closer, although they are providing cross-subsidy to the rest of the residential categories, even though the service charge that we have is probably 120 Rand short of where it needs to be per month. Also, the poor and the lifeline, while we have been trying to limit customers accessing these tariffs over the last number of years, and we do have graphs that can show you how we've done that, whether we've used property value or consumption or the like, to actually limit access, so that it's actually benefiting to the correct customers. Yes, absolutely. From a ring fencing point of view, in terms of costs, and we will definitely provide updated slides with only the regulated portion. I think that's fair. We can certainly do that after the meeting, and we'll provide that so that you can have that assessment. I think Lisa has covered it, but the extra 0.5% essentially that we are asking for is a direct result of responses to our environment in those three particular areas. We don't have project plans as such. A lot of the security costs we are actually already incurring in the current financial year. We have identified vehicles, or we've estimated the number of vehicles and response teams that we need for physical security on the ground. So while not project plans as such, it's very much buried in what we plan to do, because while there will be law enforcement staff, there will be dedicated law enforcement staff which we will pay for from our tariff. So very much embedded in our depots and what they do. So yes, the revenue that is allocated to that is not ring fenced in that way. As I say, it's essentially just embedded in our plans going forward. Yeah, I think also just around the intake points and the reduction in consumption, while we are seeing overall reduction in terms of kilowatt hour sales and the customers that can afford to defect with alternate technologies providing the subsidy, we also are trying to kind of post the service charge and energy charges at the correct level so that they don't actually receive a subsidy. And that is also important. At the end of the day, while our energies are actually shrinking because of many reasons, the customer base is in fact increasing because our informality is actually increasing. And these are customers that we then provide a subsidy to them. So yes, the service charge and cost reflective tariffs are quite important. I think that's all from my side, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, colleagues, both to yourself, Dr. Rand Conter and Donovan. Thank you for your input. We have gone. It's been 15 more minutes, but I see my colleagues' hands shot up again. Maybe okay. Can I give them a second round, Mr. Mkhize?
Yeah, just a quick one from my side. Thanks for the responses. I would just like to know if they've consulted with their customers, the residents in the metro, and evidence to that. And two, if they must also, when talking about security, to look at the adequacy of the metro police as things stand now. Just a justification from the point of view. I'd just like to get clarity on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Sibanda?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the city for the responses. Chairperson, I think it will be important for the city to provide us with detailed information that will justify items such as the security for infrastructure as well as the bulk intake point, so that when we look at that, it's not just a question of the city saying we will require so much, but we're also in a position to look at the timelines. And if at all we approve, at least we know that we've got the benefit of knowing whether these projects will be undertaken within a particular time frame. So I think it will be important for the city to come back to us with detailed information on those, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Maybe just 1 minute, both yourselves, colleagues.
Thank you. So in terms of, we have quite an extensive public participation process, and we can provide a download from our system in terms of what we've received during that process, which has concluded already, so we can provide that. I think, yes, for the bulk intake point, we can show you the necessary details that you require on that. We'll get that from the engineers. And then also, just in terms of the adequacy of the security, while we are receiving a certain support that obviously we need to pay for from our Metro Police, our adequacy, as you put it, I think is why we want dedicated staff, so that we don't have the situation where we are waiting to respond to customers because we don't have the necessary security with us. At times it's not only one team that you need in certain areas. You actually need one security team with the artisans and so on, responding to the call. But you actually need another team sitting further back that can respond when the attacks actually happen, because it is inevitable. And then you actually have additional staff there. So that's part of our strategy as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to, on behalf of NERSA, I'd like to thank both yourselves, Donovan and Dr. Conter, for a great presentation, for your inputs, which I think would go a long way to assisting us in terms of the decisions that we need to make. I'd like to thank you all, and you can now unshare your presentation, and then we can move on to the next presenter. Thank you very much. Can we now move on to the next presenter, please? I saw him signing in, Mr. Kevin Carolas. If you can show your face, sir. Donovan.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm just going to put on my camera to share my screen.
Please do. I need to swear you in first before you can speak, as it is the actual rule, the house rule. If I can just see your face so I can swear you in, sir.
Okay.
If it's only just for the swearing in, you can switch off your camera thereafter.
Okay. Just give me a moment.
Yeah, we're still in the dark on this side. Now we can see you. Thank you. Welcome. So before we actually start with the presentation itself, can you just go through the formalities? Firstly, would you object to taking an oath?
No.
In that case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence and the information you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
For the record, please state your name, the organization that you represent today, and your designation therein, please.
Kevin Carolus, Stellenbosch Municipality Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carolus. You have 15 minutes for your presentation. I assume that you have the, you've been given authority to, or been given the powers to actually share your presentation. If not, IT can assist.
Yes, Chair, I will
share?
be able to share my presentation.
Okay.
Chair, just to inform you that I will also be assisted by the senior manager that is responsible for the electrical services department at the municipality, as well as the senior manager for financial management services at Stellenbosch Municipality.
Ideally, if they're going to speak, we'll need to swear them in, but perhaps can we, if there's a need for either one of them to come onto the podium and speak, we'll then swear them in at that particular point, unless you would want to have one or two of them to be sworn in at this stage.
No, Chair, it is fine with me. If there is required for one of or two of the officials to respond to questions, and then we can swear them in at that time. It's in order with me.
All right, thank you. Well, you've got your 15 minutes. So if you can share your presentation, and then your 15 minutes will then start. Thank you. We can see your presentation. Great. Your 15 minutes starts now. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. And firstly, I would just like to greet everyone. My name is Kevin Carolus. I am the Chief Financial Officer at Stellenbosch Municipality, and I will be doing the presentation on behalf of the municipality and will be assisted by our Senior Manager, Nobelele Zwane, the Senior Manager in the Electricity Services Department, as well as the Senior Manager in our Financial Management Services Department, Monique Steyer. As part of my presentation, I will just give a short background of Stellenbosch Municipality. Then I'll have a quick overview of the legislative framework. Then we'll look at budget assumptions specifically for Stellenbosch Municipality. And I'll briefly talk about the repairs and maintenance requirements for the next financial year, as well as what we plan to do in terms of our capital investment in the electrical infrastructure. Then we also will show you a comparison of the household accounts with our neighboring municipalities. And that will conclude then the presentation by the municipality. So just to have a quick look at where Stellenbosch Municipality is located within the Cape Winelands District Municipality in the Western Cape. You will also see that on the map in the white area, that is the municipal area for Stellenbosch Municipality. You also find that its neighboring municipalities are the city of Cape Town, the Drakensberg Municipality, as well as the Beere Valley Municipality. And also next to the Cape Winelands district is also the Overberg district. And we will also be looking at a household comparison for the Overstrand municipality that's part of the Overberg district. Also, very importantly for Stellenbosch Municipality, we are providing electricity to the Stellenbosch town, as well as Johannesdal, Peniel and Franschhoek. Very importantly, we took over the Peniel network in 2020. From the Drakensberg municipality, as this was a electricity network within the municipal area. So it was previously the Drakensberg municipality provided electricity to the Peniel area. Then we've also got Eskom distribution areas within Stellenbosch, and those areas are Jamestown, Wraithby, Kalmo, Klapmuts, and the rural areas. That is just in terms of an overview. In terms of the background, Stellenbosch Municipality got a population of 196,036, and a number of households is 50,328. I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of the rest of the stats. It will be part of the presentation that we will share. Just one specific area that I also would like to highlight is the access to basic service area, specifically for electrical services that are sitting at 92.2%. If we just continue to the legislative overview and how we prepared our tariffs for the next financial year, we specifically look at the council approved policy, and I just has put on the slide a few extracts out of that policy, and that policy specifically states that the municipalities' tariffs must reasonably reflect the costs that are associated with delivering that service, and that will include capital, operating, maintenance, the administration cost, the replacements cost, as well as the interest or finance charges. Then it also specifically highlights the methodology and the process that needs to be followed with the setting of the electricity tariffs. I'm not going to go into too much detail. It will be addressed later in the presentation on what was the methodology that the municipalities followed. Then when we also look at the compilation of tariffs, we also need to take into account the guidance that are issued by National Treasury. A National Treasury issued guidance in the MFMA Circular 115 that also stipulate that setting of tariffs must be cost reflective. This is a requirement of Section 74 of the Municipal Systems Act, and that it means that the tariffs that the municipality set must be able to cover the full cost of renting of the service. This is also in line with the approved tariff policy of the municipality. So just to quickly look at the NASA formula that was used for the electricity increases to municipalities, I'm just going to quickly look at the actual tariff that was communicated by NASA. Very importantly for us as a municipality, the cost that was used was based on the total cost of all municipalities for the 2019-20 financial year, and the contribution was then determined based on those costs. The increases are also what was published by NASA, and then we get to the guideline increase of 7.47%. But as Stellenbosch Municipality, we wanted to specifically look at what is the requirements in terms of the cost for Stellenbosch Municipality, and also to look at what was the increases that we included in our budget for the next financial year. Also, very importantly, that the percentage increases that was used by NASA, specifically for salaries, is not in line with the collective wage agreement that was entered into for this year as well as for the next two financial years. Those salary increases in the area of 4.9% and not 4.4%. But looking at the budget assumptions, like I said, we specifically looked at Stellenbosch Municipality and what assumptions we use for the different expenditure categories. So for the bulk purchases, from Eskom, we used the increase of 8.61%. Then for our expenditure items, specifically your general expenses items, we used the projection by the South African Reserve Bank for the inflation. And those projections were 4.9%. And that was part of the policy statement in January 2022. I would like to also inform everyone that those increases has actually increased to above 5% for this year. The 4.9% that was in the policy statement by the Reserve Bank were used to project the general expenditure by the municipality, as well as the charges from the other departments and the bad debt provision. Like I've also mentioned, that the employee-related cost was informed by the collective wage agreement that was negotiated on a national level that the municipality is part of, and will be responsible to implement those increases. The increase for the next financial year will be 4.9%. And also very important in terms of the wage curve agreement that was also agreed on a national level, also allow employees that do qualify for a 2.4% notch increase. Very importantly, these notch increases are not performance-based notch increases, and staff, if they do qualify, will get this notch increase annually. Very importantly is also that the most of the staff within the electricity department qualify for these notch increases. Then the finance cost was specifically for the current borrowings or external loans that the municipality has taken up, as well as the external loans that we will take up within the next financial year. Now, those external loans are funds that we require to do urgent refurbishment on our network, as well as to replace some of our infrastructure assets. So it's very important that we take up the external loan to ensure that we still provide a quality service to our residents. So having taken those budget assumptions and using the same formula that NERSA is using, you will see that the municipalities increase, if you just look at the guideline increase, will be 7.9%. This is what we also use to increase our tariffs with. So repairs and maintenance, we've also indicated will increase with 4.9%. That is linked to the inflation increase of salary with 7.3%, finance cost 2%. But this is specifically looking at the external loan funding that we do require from the municipality side, the bad debt provision with 4.9%, charges from municipal departments 4.9%, and general expenses 4.9%. Like I said, this is linked to the Reserve Bank policy statement and the inflation that was indicated as part of that statement in January 2022, as well as the collective wage agreement. And then also very importantly is why do the municipality request the additional increase? It's very important that the additional cost that we will incur is linked to our capital investment that the municipality do require, and then also the repairs and maintenance. And like I've already said, it is very important that we continue with the refurbishment and replacement of our infrastructure services to ensure that that we continue with a quality service. But if we also don't refurbish and maintain our asset, it's actually going to cost the municipality more in terms of preventative maintenance or in terms of reactive maintenance. And also in the long run, it will also reduce the useful life of our infrastructure assets. So it's very important that we refurbish and replace, as well as make sure that we do have sufficient funding for our maintenance to ensure that we can use the assets over the useful life. And also, if we do not maintain our asset to then to do any maintenance after that will be very expensive, and it will also cost the municipality money. When we also look at specifically at the impact of not investing in maintenance and the capital refurbishment, you will see that it will have a big impact on the municipality in the long run. And therefore, it's important that we need to sufficiently budget for repairs and maintenance as well as capital investment. This specific slide is an extract from the Western Cape Government SIME assessment. This is the assessment that they do on the municipality's budget, where they specifically look at certain ratios. This specific ratio looks at repairs and maintenance as a percentage of PPE and investment property. Now, you will see that for Stellenbosch municipality, that specific percentage is sitting at less than 1%, is currently sitting at 0.5%, while the norm that was set by National Treasury is 8%. You'll also see that repairs and maintenance percentage is also the lowest in the province for Stellenbosch municipality. Now, this assessment was done on the budget for the next financial year, but we would just like to show the importance that the municipality need to increase their budget or their provisions for repairs and maintenance over the next financial years to ensure that we do have sufficient funds to be able to do those planned and to do the planned maintenance and to ensure the useful life of our assets. Also, part of the assessment that was done by the Western Cape Government is also to look at what are the funds that the municipality are investing in renewal and upgrading of existing assets. Now, for this specific ratio or area that they look at, the ratio is 40%. Now, you will be able to see that in the previous financial years up to June 2021. The specific ratio was below the 40% norm, but you will see that it increased from the current financial year over the next 3 financial years to more than 40%. As a municipality, we've also decided it's very important that we need to invest in renewal and upgrading of our assets. We've also determined that we will not be able to do it out of our own funds. So it's very important that we look at a balanced funding mix for our capital investment. So we did not just look at our own funds, but we also looked at taking up external loans to fund those critical infrastructure investment that is required by the municipality. And for that reason, we did increase our percentage in terms of the total capital budget that we invest in renewal and upgrading to above 40%. Then it's also important to mention that we also took over in the correction in February 2019, the Benil network from Drakensberg municipality. The Benil network was in a very bad state. We needed to do urgent replacement of assets, and maintenance were required on that specific network. We've also appointed a consultant to draw up an electrical master plan specifically for that network, as it did require some big investment from the municipality side to ensure that we'll be able to deliver the quality of service that we want to our residents within the Benil network. What we've also then identified as part of that process are 2 major projects that we need to do within the next years that will require investment by the municipality, and that is the upgrading to the electricity network in Benil, as well as the construction. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've run out of time. I don't know if you can please just begin to wrap up. Apologies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Will the Chair, thank you. So those 2 projects are the Benil network as well as the Bindon. As part of the presentation, we also saw what capital investment is required for those 2 specific projects, and that's also part of the presentation. Over the 3 years is 63.1 million. This is also to indicate the external loans that we will take up in this financial year is 20.9 million and 39.9 million within the next year. And that will have an increase in the finance charges of the municipality. In terms of further investment, or specifically the external loans in total that we will take up for the electricity network is 167 million over the 3 years, of which is 34 in next year, and the year after that 37 million and 95 in the 3rd year. We also want to also illustrate the indigent support that we also provide to our indigent households. That's 103 units per month, and the qualifying income is one of the highest in terms of who can qualify, and that is up to a monthly household income of 6,500 per month. When we compare the households with our neighboring municipalities, specifically looking at an affordable household, you'll see that it compares very well. It is the 2nd lowest in terms of neighboring municipality. The lowest is Beeda Valley, but when you compare our indigent households to our neighboring municipalities, you will see that it is the lowest within when it compares against Oversrand, Drakensberg, and Beeda Valley. I'm not going to go into the alternative energy part of it. Also, just to to mention is that we also took out over the street lights in Jamestown is going to be maintained by Stellenbosch municipality. They will also require additional funds for repairs and maintenance. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Carolus. So now I'll ask the members of the panel to engage with the presentation. Members, over to you. Got any questions? Mr. Sibanda, start with you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. Excuse me, and thank you to Mr. Carolus for the presentation. Now, you indicated the tariff principles in your first few slides, and one of those principles is that tariffs need to reflect the costs associated with the relevant service. So for purposes of this, of your application, did you submit a cost of supply study that will then underpin or justify the additional increases that you require, which are above the guideline that we provided? If you could just please confirm that. If not, then perhaps you just need to indicate to us how do you then justify, in the absence of a cost of supply study, how do you justify these various the increases? And then secondly, you also indicated that you would like to undertake capital investments in electricity infrastructure, and you identified certain projects that you want to undertake. So my question is, did you submit detailed project plans for these as part of your request, so that it's clear to us what you intend doing, by when, and costing how much? But we require detailed project plans for those items. And then we also require ring fencing of the additional revenues. If you can also perhaps confirm that if granted, this will be ring fenced. And then I just want to check with you. So our finance costs, in terms of the guideline, are based on the Reserve Bank repo rate increase that was done at the beginning of the year, which was around 25 basis points. But your finance costs are way above that. They're around 2%. How do you justify that? If you can just please talk to that as well. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Advocate, I saw your hand came up and then it dropped it again. I thought maybe you were covered. Can I give you an opportunity?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to Mr. Carolus for his presentation. Chair, I did, but he raised my hand, but I thought I was covered by Mr. Sibanda's first question that relates to the council-approved policy on costs and our requirement in terms of having to submit a cost of supply in an application similar to this one. So I am covered with that. But what I wanted to find out, which is just my next question, which is on the procedural part of the municipality in their tariff application process, as to whether were there any, or did they have a public hearing on this particular tariff that they are applying to NERSA? And if they did, what were their stakeholders or customers' views in relation to this in relation to this tariff that is higher than the guidelines provided by NERSA? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. Mr. Mkhize, your question, sir?
Thanks, Chairperson and Mr. Carolus for the presentation. I am lightly covered by my colleagues on all the issues, but would also appreciate if, in terms of the project plans, you clear with the MFA approvals, which then will also touch to the issue of the interest rates as having been optimal, the relevance of the projects to electricity provision to residents, as well as the issue of cash flow projections, because it doesn't mean that if a project is X million rand, you need that X million rand right from the word go. You might have it such that you need it in small chunks as you go along, and therefore not requiring that the whole amount be provided as in terms of the tariff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Carolus, maybe just a couple from myself. The first one, just as a confirmation, is your electricity business ring-fenced from other services that are provided by the municipality? as required by the Electricity Regulation Act? That's the first question. The second question on cost reflectivity, which you do mention, the one thing that's not apparent for me is the municipality charging, are there any surcharges as provided for in terms of the Municipal Systems Act as well as Section 229 of the Constitution? Do you have any surcharges and are they clearly reflected? There's a bit of feedback. I think there's somebody whose mic is on, Samuel Cutler. Please put your mic on mute. Thank you. Yeah, so are there surcharges that you are charging in terms of your tariffs? If so, where are they? Why are they not clearly reflected as part of cost reflectivity? The third question that I wanted to ask is, when I hear talking about bad debts, the question that raises that is it fair to charge paying customers for non-paying customers? Those are the questions to you, Mr. Carolus, if you can reflect on them. You've got 10 minutes to respond, and I'll be a bit strict on the time on this in this case. And any questions that you may not be able to respond to, if you can maybe just provide your answers in writing in the next couple of days or so, please, to assist with the evaluation of your application. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to request if our Senior Manager, Nobelela Zwane, will also be able to answer some of the questions. I will deal with most of them, if it's fine with you, Chairperson.
All right, we'll actually have to swear her in before she speaks, but please proceed to see which questions that you may not have responded to.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. In the first question on the cost of supply study, the municipality did a cost of supply study, but it was a few financial years ago. So for this current applications, we haven't updated that study. We are currently in the process of finalizing a cost of supply study, but it was done in the previous financial, but not for this application. Chairperson, just in terms of the additional revenue, why we require it, like I've indicated within the presentation, it is for the additional finance charges for the borrowings that we will take up, that we do require. That's why you'll also find that the percentage that we've allocated for this specific area is more than what was allocated within the NASA formula or the guideline. And the reason why it's more, it is not just the increase within the repo prime rate of the Reserve Bank, but you must also keep in mind that the municipality will also take up additional borrowings to fund some of its capital projects for over the next financial year as well as the following 2 years. And because of that additional external loan funding that it will take up, its finance charges will increase. Like we've sowed, and we will increase our external loans with 20 million in this year and 39.9 million within the following year. So that increase will result in the increase in finance charges that will be more than the repo rate or prime rate increase. And the ring fence in terms of the additional revenue that we have ring fence, and like I said, it is specifically for the finance charges as well as the repairs and maintenance that is required by the municipality. And like I've said, that we are already under the norm that is given through buying national treasuries. It's very important that we increase the investment on that. We will be able to provide after this meeting the detail in terms of where we will use that additional revenue on, and more detail in terms of those two items. The detailed project plans, just to also inform this committee is that when we do our capital budget for the municipality, we do it over a 10-year period as part of our capital expenditure framework. that was submitted also to COCTA. That capital expenditure framework do contain detail in terms of what we plan to do, as well as the cash flows over the financial years, and also the start date as well as the end date, as well as the location of those projects. The detailed project plans were not submitted as part of the applications, but out of a CF document that is also made public and is also found on one of the COCTA websites. We will be able to get that information out of there, but it is made public. And there are specific deadlines for those projects that we want to do over the next year. In terms of the public hearing, we did have a public hearing for our budget as well as the IDP, and part of that public hearing was also the tariff increases. There were public meetings with our stakeholders as well as residents of Stellenbosch municipality. We haven't received any negative comments on the electricity increase of 7.9%. Yes, the electricity services are ring-fenced within the municipality, so we do meet those requirements. In terms of a bad debt, the provision that is made is very important. That when we look at our revenue and when we do our revenue for over the next financial year, you specifically look at the amount of revenue you will be billed. But as we all are well aware, is that not all the revenue that you bill you'll be able to collect. So what we will reflect in any study will be the total revenue that will be billed. And your bad debt provision is to make that provision for those revenue that you will not be able to collect, and that you will also need to consider as that will not be able to get in. So you, as part of your revenue, you will show the total that is billed, but not the total that is collected or will be collected. And therefore, you need to make provision for your debt impairment, the amounts of that you will write off, as well as for your bad debt provision you need to make as part of your expenditure budget. Then the other question, I'm going to ask Nobulelo Zwane, he can assist with this question about the surcharge as well as maybe the cost of supply study.
Thank you. Ms. Zwane, if I can swear you in, ma'am. Thank you. Do you object to taking an oath?
No, I do not object.
Thank you. With that, can you kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following? Do you solemnly declare that the information and the evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, the organization you are representing, and your designation in it, please.
My name is Nobulelo. My surname is Zwane. I am the senior manager for the electricity services department within Stellenbosch municipality.
Thank you, ma'am. If you can then proceed with responding. You can switch off your video if you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. A very good morning to everyone. As Mr. Carolus has just indicated, there was a cost of supply that was submitted to NERSA in 2018, March, and in September, NERSA engaged us on that. At the time, unfortunately, there was a major change within our distribution area. And we then submitted a new cost of supply in October 2021. NERSA started engaging us on that in May 2022. So there is not an approved cost of supply as yet, but the information and the inputs that were utilized in this tariff preparation do come in that process or in that study. The second question that Mr. Carolus requested that I assist with is in terms of the surcharges. If I understand it correctly, fixed charges, yes, our tariffs do have that, and we will provide them the details in terms of the breakdown between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Zwane, and thank you, colleagues, for keeping to the 10 minutes. Much appreciated. We appreciate your presentation and the engagement and your responses. You do have an opportunity, if you want to, then submit further answers to the questions that were posed by members. If you want to submit that in writing, please do in the next couple of days to assist the team who are the ones that are evaluating your application. With that, on behalf of NERSA, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, both Mr. Carlos and Ms. Swane, for your inputs. Thank you. You can now unshare your presentation, Mr. Carlos. Thanks. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the third presenter of the day, Mr. Kagisho Nerutla. If I can also see you, sir, for the swearing in. Thank you. All right, thank you. We can clearly see you. You are welcomed. Can I start first by just asking the question, would you object to taking an oath?
Just to correct, Chair, my name is General Moruri, Divisional Head from Expenditure, not really Kagiso Nerutla is on leave.
Okay, thank you. General, but would you object to taking an oath?
No, I'm not objecting.
Okay, with that, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the information and evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, your organization, and your designation therein, please.
General Moruri, Divisional Head Expenditure from the seat of Eguruland.
Thank you, Mr. Morori. We don't have a presentation from you. I assume you're going to be making a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, if you can then share with us, and please also, if you don't mind, you can share it on the screen, but also if you can share with the team, please, with Mr. Dlamini for the record. You've got 50 minutes for your presentation, sir, and your 50 minutes will start as soon as I see your presentation on the screen. Thank you, and you'll put it on slideshow. Thank you. You've got 15 minutes, and your 15 minutes starts now. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Please welcome our presentation from the seat of Ekurhuleni. From our side, this is the presentation visible on your side?
Yes, it is, and we can continue. Thanks.
Yes, because on our side, the city are applying for an average tariff increase above the 7.47. So we'll start by giving the legislative requirement and the approach in the process we followed, because we are saying in terms of Section 16 of the MFMA, Council of the Municipalities for each financial year must approve the annual budgets for the municipality before the start of the financial year, and table its 90 days prior to the start of the budget year. Of which we did do that because the city compiled the draft 2022-23 budget in March 2022, and it was tabled to council by the 31st of March. At that meeting, the tariff increase was set at 9.61%. The percentage increase was approved by our council in that sitting, and the same was presented during the IDP public participation process. At the time of tabling the draft budgets, the only non-percentage increase was 9.61%, which is the ESCOM direct customer increase. The city did a modeling on the previous year increase for municipal direct customers in relation to ESCOM direct customer and bulk purchases. However, the norm that has been observed that bulk purchase increase is higher than direct customers did not materialize. When the bulk purchases increase was made available, it was actually the opposite of the norm that has been observed. But due to the uncertainty this created with regard to what could have expected for the municipality direct customer increases, the city then decided to apply the 9.61% increase. Then the tariff increase approach. NERSA provided a consultation guideline in terms of this approach for tariff increases dated 30 March 2022, which was distributed on the 31st of March. And by this time, as we mentioned in the previous slide, that our council had already set on the approval of the tariffs. The deadline for the submission of the comments on the consultation paper was set to 22nd April 2022. As the city, we then responded duly to all stakeholder comments requested to be answered in the consultation paper. Upon receiving the consultation paper, after the draft budget being approved by the city in March, the city modeled 9.61% against the Annexure A, which is the proposed municipal tariff that form part of the annexures in the ITP. With the tariff increase application sent to NERSA for approval, it has indicated that despite the 2.1414 increase above the 7.47 guideline increase, the city effective rates are still within the benchmark per category. If maybe, Chair, I can show you from the, what do they call it? If I can show you from, because we also prepared the supporting documentation on this regard to show that we are still within a range. On this one, it will be a separate document. Which is this one visible on your side, Chair?
Yes, we can see the document, but you've taken it off now. But yeah, now
Okay.
it's visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, Chair, basically what we are saying as much as we are above the 7.41%, however, overall we are still within the range, because if you can check under tariff COE benchmarking, that's our 2.4% is still within the, for example, the 2.6. Just to give comfort that overall we are still within the acceptable range on that one, Chair. I'll just go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Okay. Then we move to the next slide. The tariff A residential inclining block tariff at 9.61%, which is the one that we've already explained. The inclining block tariff principle, as previously is aligned to the NERSA guideline. However, with the indicated exception below, COE has several areas within our boundaries where ESCOM supplies electricity. The total number of customers in these areas are given approximately 160,000. The IBT remains implemented at levels identical to ESCOM. Home Lights 68 notably, non-local authority. To achieve the above level of IBT, COE had to deviate from the IBT in two aspects already approved by NERSA. Tariff I, J, and G increase, that one is same as Eskom Megaflex 8.61, and all other tariffs increase is sitting on 9.61%. Then before we close on our presentation, we also want to share with you the intervention that the city have in place to reduce the energy losses on our side, because as part of our ongoing process to reduce it, we also tabled to the council for Q3 initiatives in place to make sure that our electricity losses are reduced. Is the PDF document visible on your side?
It's still a blank document at this stage.
You still can't see it. Let me just show it again.
It is visible. It is visible now.
Okay, it's visible now. Yes. So we'll just start from the top, Joe. To say, as part of the intervention that we've already reported, that we normally report on it on a quarterly basis, the latest one, which is a Q3 report, we are planning to renew meter base on all small business customers. At the moment, we can say that at the end of Q3, 126 business converted to AMR metering just for the third quarter, which is just 3 months. We are going to remove illegal electricity connection. On this one, we'll be working with our law enforcement agencies, which are MPD, SAPS. Then we are also planning to electrify informal settlement, and within that quarter we had already electrified 1,282 informal settlements, so that we don't have an unaccounted electricity. Then all existing projects in the city to continue. Another one. Then we have several large power user projects, which is to replace 10-year-old meters, resellers of electricity on automated factors on AMR. Then on the Southwest MMC, it will also be the same thing, because this will be done for, sorry to take you back, this will be done for Northeast and Southwest. Or another thing that we are going to do is to reduce interim meter readings. We are going to reduce interim meter readings. Then to handle error 30 meters, prepayment meter with communication errors. So we can say on our side, these are the interventions that have been planned to reduce the energy losses on our side. We would like to thank the chair for giving us the opportunity to present. Then we will welcome the question, and with me I have the senior management from Energy Department that will be assisting me as well in answering the questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, General. Just sounds nice to call you just General, Mr. Mororu. We will unfortunately have to, if anybody else other than ourselves is going to be speaking, would actually have to swear them in. But we will handle that whereas the questions are asked and we feel that you need assistance from them in responding to those questions. Now, members, over to you, if you can engage with the presentation. Mr. Mkiza first, sir.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks, Mr. Mororu, for the presentation. from my side, just one issue, actually. One of looking at the fact that the application was received on the 7th of June. And you said your council set on the 31st of March. Having heard of the decision on the ESCOM tariff increase, why couldn't the council meet again? You organize that you rework your figures based on this, because I'm saying this because there is no other substantive issue that you are actually raising, justifying why you should have an above guideline increase. Safe to say that the benchmark, you are still within benchmark per category, but wouldn't it be actually a relief to your residents if you were to stick to the benchmark? And then related to that is, having then had the meeting of the council and then gotten the final decision on the ESCOM tariff increase, wouldn't you, did you then go back to your residents in terms of consulting them regarding the increase that you had made versus and the decision for you to stick to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Sibanda, your hand was up. Are you covered, sir?
Chairperson, I'm covered. Maybe just to put the issue, or maybe just to elaborate on Mr. Mkhize's question. And thank you, Mr. Mururi, for the presentation. So for us to consider above guideline tariff increases, we have certain requirements, or we require certain information from licensees. For instance, you are expected to submit a cost of supply study, and to make sure that whatever projects, and you have indicated that there are specific projects that you want to undertake, whether there are detailed plans for those. So the question really is, you haven't indicated in your presentation, apart from the timing issue where you're saying council approved your budget on the 31st of March, and by that time there was no guideline from NERSA. But once there was a guideline published, why couldn't you then revise your tariffs to be within the guideline, and whether you are willing to do that now that there is a guideline in place? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Before you respond, I think the question is very similar, Mr. Mororo. But can I just and this is, you don't need to respond to this perhaps if you don't have the details, but just for my own information, you seem the city of Ekurhuleni seems to have to be focusing on this process, on this issue of addressing energy losses from the 15.94% or so that has been the number that we have from the deforms. The question that I just want to understand, would you have a view of what the percentage of non-technical losses are? Because it does look like your focus is really just on the non-technical losses, metering and cutting off illegal connections and so forth. Can you maybe just indicate of that 15%, 15.94% that has been declared, how much of that is actually non-technical losses? Over to you, sir. Oh, you've got 10 minutes to respond, and also you have a choice of responding in writing as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair, for the question. I think our colleagues from Energy Department will come in. I will just open the camera for him so that you can see him. And from And from through confirmation with my team is that some of the information, like the motivation for charging above the tariff was actually submitted. However, after this meeting, we'll also share a detailed document as well. Front, you can go now.
So before you speak, can I perhaps just swear in? Firstly, do you object to taking an oath?
No, I don't.
Okay, in that case, kindly raise your right hand. Oh, thank you. I was about to say I can't see you. Kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the information and the evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, your organization, and your designation therein, please.
Okay, it's Frans Brando, City of Ekurhuleni, Senior Engineer, Revenue Customs Services.
Thank you. You can then proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the clause 12 that has been detailed in the final the final NASA submission, we actually are committing, will commit ourselves to those what's name. So the number 12A, 12.2A, it's a cost of supply study that must be submitted. City of Ekurhuleni has actually done a cost of supply study in 2018 and has actually actively been working on it. I think it has been also referred to NASA for approval. However, with all the changes that has come through the various increases that we've experienced over the few years, we're going to have to re-evaluate our cost of supply study and also add the changes to that, together with a small-scale embedded generation that also has been introduced. And currently, the City of Ekurhuleni is currently standing at, say, 150 megawatts of embedded generation. And we actually have now maybe a projected growth. Also, in terms of load shedding, we've also seen that many people are actually changing to the alternative supply options as well, but still would like to remain with the grid. So we're definitely going to have to relook at the cost of supply study and have a submission as soon as possible, to have it finalized, submitted to NASA for approval in the next session. And then 12.2B is that the additional revenue should be quantified per customer category, including forecast sales assumptions. That has already been provided to NASA. Our representative at NASA has received the revenue analysis. Same with 12.2C. A detailed plan on the projects for which the additional funds used to be provided. Now, should the increase be approved by NASA, there is a future plan with that we already worked with the World Bank. It's a non-technical loss roadmap that has been fully detailed with various interactions, requiring in some cases resources, in some cases it requires infrastructure strengthening, in some cases re-looking at certain strategic points that we need to strengthen. So that has also been provided. And then 12.2D, the approved additional revenue must be ring-fenced and must be strictly be identified per project. And again, should it be approved, the city will be able to provide that as a ring-fence project, but also it's easy quantifiable per category as per the revenue analysis that has been done before. And then obviously there's a 12.2E that we should report on a 6-monthly basis. However, it's still subject to approval. And then, Mr. Chair, then coming to the next question with regard to the losses. The non-technical losses, the City of Ekurhuleni has done a non-technical loss study, and from that study, the overall non-technical loss has indicated that it's 4.35% is we can attribute that towards technical losses. So the remaining will then be our non-technical losses, which obviously have also administrative losses in it as well as we go along. But yes, that's going to be the non-technical loss then from there. So we're looking at roughly about 12%. It was 11.5 or 12% non-technical losses then. I think that has answered all the questions. There's one more with regards to Mr. Mkhize, and was also reiterated by Mr. Fungai, is that to rework the budget after receiving it after 31st of March, we have to, well, the city has already approved the final budget on the 25th of May. And what we've noted is the final of NERSA, the final NERSA was published on NERSA's website 26th of May. So to rework the budget, it's maybe at this stage it's already been approved by council, and so that's over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, both yourselves, Mr. Brando and Mr. Mororo for the presentation. Don't see any follow-ups from my colleagues, from the members of the panel, and therefore I would just like to thank you for your input, and please assist us and provide this additional information that you are going to provide. Oh, I see Mr. Mkhize has a follow-up. Mr. Mkhize, for your follow-up, sir.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just wanted to get clarity here. With regard to the publication, was a decision that was already made. In your view, are you of the view that your residents will still be fine with a tariff increase that is above guideline, having known now what the decision was? Because there was no consultation post-that. Just want to get the clarity. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, both yourselves, Mr. Mororo.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Mr. Mkhize. During the public participation, there was no objection at all from the residents, and based on our assessment, I think we did not have any discomforts, because we've consolidated inputs from different customer cares and from different areas. So from where we are sitting, we really don't have a big outcry when it comes to that. But maybe obvious with the residents becoming aware of the new tariff, maybe now there might be certain people might raise questions, but at the time we did not have any issues.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, I see there's a hand that's up from the community. Unfortunately, as indicated, only the members of the panel may ask questions on the presenters. It's unfortunate, but any other question can be pushed through to Mr. Eliezer Dlamini at eliezer.dlamini@nersa.org. That's that unfortunately is how the system works. As I started to thank both yourselves, Mr. Brando and Mr. Mororo, for your inputs. On behalf of NERSA, we appreciate you appreciate your presentation. Can you kindly provide any additional information that we may want to provide in writing in support of this application? And we thank you. We can now move on to the next presenter. Can I maybe just give a comfort break? My clock says it's 10:59 or 11. It's now 11. Can I just give a comfort break for 10 minutes or so, and then we can reconvene and start at 11:10 with the presentation from both Mr. William Mars and Mr. Pierre van der Heever from Witzenberg Municipality. If you can prepare for your presentation, sirs, I would appreciate that. Can we convene again in 10 minutes time? Just a 10-minute comfort break, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
It is 11 minutes past, sorry, it's 10 minutes past 11. If we can reconvene, please. I hope the members are back. The members of the panel, maybe just thumbs up. Thank you, Advocate. I can see you back. Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Mkiza, thumbs up, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So the members of the panel are back. So if we can start again. We've got a presentation from Witzenberg Municipality that's up next. I guess, can I just maybe see both Mr. William Mars and Mr. Pierre van der Heever? If I can see maybe the first one, that's Mr. William Mars. Let's start with yourself, sir, for the swearing in. So, Mr. Mars, if I can ask you, would you object to taking an oath?
No.
Okay, in that case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the information and the evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, your organization that you are representing, and your designation in it, please.
William Mars, representing Witzenberg Municipality. My position is Manager Financial Administration. Chairperson, at this stage, I just need to inform you that our senior manager, Mr. Pierre van der Heever, will be in support of myself, and if technical questions arise, he will be joining in.
Thank you. Let's swear him in, and I can see him. Welcome to you, Mr. van der Heever, as well. If you can indicate, do you object to taking an oath?
I do not.
In that case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence or the information that you're going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
For the record, kindly state your name, the organization that you represent, and your designation therein, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Pierre van der Heever. I'm Senior Electrotechnical Manager at Witzenberg Municipality.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Mars, you are going to be the one making the presentation in that particular case. I assume that you'll be given rights to share your presentation. If you can maybe load it. And we'll give you 15 minutes for your presentation. Thank you. It shows, you can put it on slide mode. You've got 15 minutes for your presentation, Mr. Mars. And your 15 minutes will start now. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. It's a privilege to present to you our Witzenberg Municipality's case for applying for an increase above the guideline increase of 7.47%. Just quickly on the table of contents, I will have a look at the current status. Then I will just quickly give a short customer profile, look at some consumption statistics, and then also just see how that filters into the financial results, and then just a quick summary on the protection study as well. Our current status, Chairperson, is that we were able to generate minimal profits over the past years, but in our current budget cycle,
Mr. Mars, I'm sorry to disturb you. I assume you're now on slide 3, but we're still on slide 1 on our side. And also, if you can put your presentation on slide mode, I think it will be slightly bigger.
It is already on slide mode. Can you see it?
Well, okay, it's not on our side, but we are still on slide 1 on my side.
Okay, let me just try
on the heading slide.
Okay, I'm gonna try and share it again on this on the slide mode. Is it on slide mode now?
Not really, but you can just move down to slide 3 is fine.
Okay, I'm not gonna share it on the slide note. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah, we are now on slide 3. On slide 3, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so we were able to generate minimal profits over the years from the electricity service. You know, our current budget cycle indicates that we will be running the electricity service at a loss. This skewed increase in terms of bulk purchases and allowable increase that we as a municipality is allowed to give through to consumers is finally caught up with us. And in addition to that, the salary and fuel increases and also security services is also added to the burden. We are experiencing minimal growth in terms of consumption and users, and we do have an aging infrastructure. And this lastly, the municipality is currently running in excess of the NMD. It's a notified maximum demand of 46.2 MVA. And this current ESCOM backbone network does not permit an increase of the NMD until such time as the backbone network has been upgraded. Okay, if we have a look at our customer profile, currently in Witzenberg, if we look at residential users, we have about 13,000 residential users. Commercial or business, we look at 310 users. In manufacturing and industrial, it's more or less 220. So we are a very small municipality, and our main sources of electricity income comes from the manufacturing or industrial categories, we call it, and that is normally this will be your fruit package, fruit cool storage, fruit processing, and fruit products such as juices. So yes, we are a agricultural economy. Just quickly looking at consumption statistics. This graph indicates to the panel that our total consumption, which is the yellow bar there, and then the manufacturing or industrial is the gray bar, and the business is the orange, and the residential is the and the blue bar is the residential bar. So as the panel can see, that over a period of time, there's not really been an increase in consumption. You will see that from 16-17, there's actually been a decline, and a decline for about 3 years, and now we are slightly now in line. If you look at 2021-22 consumption with 15-16. So over the past years, there's not really been a growth in consumption. Okay, and I must mention to the panel members that this decline over the past years can be attributed to the drought we've experienced, and also the COVID-19 pandemic has also had an effect on consumption patterns. Then on our next slide is just our financial results. So how does this now actually formulate now, of how does this actually flows now into our financial results? And I've just depicted from 2019, the audited year, and just the cash flow there on that budget or the actuals, apologies. And then as you can see, from 1920, if we just look at the cash flow impact, we are actually now projecting a loss of almost 10 million rand just on the electricity service. So yes, this is evident that the skewed application of increases in ESCOM bulk services and increases that we can provide to the consumers is now actually caught up with us. And then on our last slide, Chairperson, the reason why we require this extra additional funds is to implement a protection study, and also to replace the related electricity network equipment that goes with that. And we have already a contract in place. It's about almost 9 million rand. So with the approval of this increase above guideline, we will be able to generate approximately 3.5 million extra in terms of electricity revenue. And that will greatly be contributed to this project that we really want to implement, as we do have aging infrastructure. Chairperson, that is then all from my side. Thank you very much to the panel and the members for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mars. Very quick, much appreciated. Took less than 8 minutes for the presentation. Brilliant, thank you. Succinct and to the point. Members, if you can then kindly engage with the presentation. By show of hands, members. Starting with Mr. Sibanda.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Mr. Mars for the presentation. Now, in order for the energy regulator to make a decision, we require evidence or certain information that would support your application or request for an above guideline tariff increase. Now, you have indicated that part of the part of what you are requiring is to replace aging infrastructure. And so what I want to check with you is whether as part of this application you have submitted the supporting information as well as the project plans that would indicate to us exactly what you require and by when. If you can just confirm whether you submitted that. But also, we also require a cost of supply study from yourselves to justify these increases. If again you can perhaps talk to us and indicate whether you have complied with that particular requirement. I also noted that your energy losses are actually above the acceptable range. If you probably can comment on that, as well as the measures that the municipality will be taking to curtail those energy losses. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. I would just like to understand from the presenter regarding the linked to the issue of the debt spiral, with the energy losses being higher than the norm or the benchmark, and then you then increase more. What are the chances from your side, as far as you can, try to project to say, wouldn't this increase then result in even less consumption and more losses, and therefore you need to be able to mitigate that by just sticking to the guideline increase. And then secondly, I would just like to know what was the result of the engagement with your residents regarding this increase, and just to get a feel in terms of, was there any public consultation and what was the outcome thereof based on your assessment and the decision being taken flowing out of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Advocate Sithole.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Mars. Chair, mine is just one question of clarity to him, which is I heard him in the presentation saying that there has been a decline in consumption, or rather no increase in consumption for a couple of years. I think he showed us a slide there. And I just want to ask him if he believes it is justifiable to use that as one of the reasons for requesting a tariff that is higher than the provided guidelines. Thank you, Chairperson. Or not. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Advocate. Mr. Mkhize, I assume that's a lingering hand? Oh,
no, Chairperson, I just needed to get some clarity here, because he's saying that the municipality is currently running in excess of its NMT, right? But at the same time, they need then to create a bottleneck so that there can be more that is utilized. Whereas at the same time, there is indicating that there's a decline. So I just want to be able to get that reconciled in my mind. It's a bit, he's saying, it's talking of a decline, at the same time it's going of a debottlenecking to enable more. Just want to get that, reconciled. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Mars, just a couple of questions from my side. The first one, if we are looking at largely, because your justification, I think, has largely been about that project, that 9 million rand project that you've already approved, and you'd be looking for contribution from the tariff in terms of funding that project. I'm just wondering, in terms of finance, would you be looking at writing off? Would you be looking at writing off that capital expenditure over 1 year? Or is it not proper that in respect of capital expenditure that it be recovered, or the cost in terms of regulatory, in terms of how it actually manifests and reflects itself on the tariff, is that it is depreciated over the useful life of the asset, number one, and then of course there will be an allowed rate of return. So instead of it being written off in just 1 year, shouldn't you be looking and seeing it being reflected in terms of depreciation as well as an accompanying rate of return request that would be associated therewith? Basically, in terms of capital repayment, are we looking at writing off that 9 million in 1 year? So that is the first question from my side. The second question from my side, which links to, you've got a provision for debt that increases from 3.3 billion to over 7 billion in the coming years. Now, for me, and it links to the question asked by Mr. Sibanda in terms of your losses that are higher than which are higher than benchmark, is that are you not, and also maybe linking to the question asked by Mr. Mkhize, in asking for a higher increase, are you not going to exacerbate, firstly, those issues of especially the non-technical losses? And maybe linked to that, is it really truly fair to get the paying customers, punishing the paying customers by taking this provision for bad debt and putting it as a cost to them, because they are already paying? Now, is it fair for them to now cover for the non-paying customers? And also, considering that amount, would that not basically be enough for you to cover for the project? If you could, the project that we are actually looking at. My last question, just a generic question to you, Mr. Mars. Is your electricity business within the city, within the municipality, is that ring-fenced as it's supposed to be in respect of the Electricity Act? So those are the questions to yourself, Mr. Mars, as supported by Mr. van der Heever. So over to you. You are free to answer those that you want to answer today, and you are also then free to also respond in writing to all other questions that you may not have sufficiently responded to verbally. Over to you, Mr. Mars.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, if there is one or two questions that I'm missing, we will be responding to those questions in writing. Just in terms of Mr. Sabanda's questions, in terms of the evidence, the only evidence that we've submitted with our application is to state that we have awarded a contract for this protection study and the related equipment, but we can provide that again to NERSA for confirmation. And in terms of the cost of supply study, we have done this study a few years back. We haven't done it in this round, but I think our financials justifies the need for this extra increase. I think I'm going to leave the 10% loss question to Mr. Pierre van der Heever to respond on. And in terms of Mr. McKee's debt spiral question, yes, so that it remains a challenge within a municipal environment not to increase a municipal account too much, as debtors will only they will only not pay. But based on our consumption stats, you can see it's evident more or less we will be able. The consumption remains. If it wasn't for the drought and the COVID-19 pandemic, our actual consumption remains more or less consistent over the financial years. So we expect that we will still be able to sell those units to the consumers. And I must also add to that the bulk of our consumption is from the manufacturing and industrial section, and those are paying customers. We don't have an issue with them paying their bills on time. I think the collection rate for those customer group is quite high. Then, Chairperson, and I think in terms of the decline in the notional maximum demand, I will pass that question to my colleague, Mr. Pierre van der Heever. And then just in terms of the question from yourself, yes, our electricity function is ring-fenced. Currently, all municipalities needs to operate on a municipal standard chart of accounts, and these accounts allows you to ring-fence revenues and expenditure based on function, funding, project, and the cost center. So yes, the electricity function is ring-fenced. I can confirm that to you. I don't know if I've missed a few. But yes, okay, the last question, in terms of the once-off write-off of that capital expenditure, no, we will not be writing off that capital expenditure in 1 year. It will be a phased-in approach based on the available budget from year to year. So yes, we will not write off that expenditure in 1 year. Thank you, Chairperson. That is all from my side. Mr. van der Heever, I see your hand is up.
Please proceed, Mr. van der Heever.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the honor of addressing. Let me just get some clarification on the table. The issue that we have not shown growth and sales in electricity is directly attributed to the fact that Eskom cannot supply us increased maximum demand. Since about 2016, Council has had to resolve that we've had to basically put a stop to development because we can't supply. If we do go over our maximum demand, we have to pay penalties. So we're in a very difficult situation. And we've been in discussions with Eskom since around, I say, about 2016. Meanwhile, existing customers push their existing connections to the maximum. So we have shown growth in our KVA component, and that has pushed us over. But luckily, we stay within the 5%. But unfortunately, because of the Eskom's unable to help us, and we still don't know when they're going to help us. We've actually had a meeting. We've had Mr. De Ruyter here in Ceres personally. We still don't know when we're going to see light at the end of that tunnel. But until it does, we have an issue of sales. In the meanwhile, because of load shedding and our constraints, people are going SSEG, and it's further impacting on us. So yes, had that not been the case, Witzenberg is a very vibrant economy, and I'm pretty sure we would have grown well. Now, as far as the network is concerned, we do sit with an old network, and it's a mixed network. We've got some very old portions of the network, and then we've got some newer sections. And the protection study was required because we've got problems discriminating and grading our protection between substations. We're finding that trips, faults on a rural network, for instance, will kick right back to the main sub or similar things. And it's a dangerous situation that we're sitting with. So we have to do the protection study, which was done, and now we've got to implement the findings. And the findings typically will include, we've got very old protection relays, and we've got some very new. So the two don't talk to each other. So the old ones have to be replaced and all the rest. So I think you can see there, I'm putting up some slides of what a protection study is about, but I'm sure everybody knows it. I mean, I've explained it. So the bottom over here, we can share this. This is the findings. I will share that with Mr. Marsh, and he will forward it to you. And this is basically what the costs were. It's over a 3-year period. We were hoping to do 21, but now that's all moved on. And the cost at that point was 6.2 million. But as if we don't have enough challenges, what has happened in the meantime is we've had vandalism on a large scale, exactly the same as Eskom's battling with. We don't understand the motivation behind it, but we're sitting with the consequences. I'm just sharing one photo here of our newest and latest substation, which they got into, and they just vandalized everything. They stole very little, but they vandalized it. Now, this substation would normally not have required much in a way of implementation costs, but because of that, we now have a quote of about 2.2 million rand just to get that one sub back online. At the moment, it is solid, and that's a very dangerous situation to have. So if you add it up, we're sitting with about 8.5 million, 8.6 million, those two figures. So yes, I just want to add on a couple of the questions that were asked. The cost of supply study was done a while ago, but we have got MER funding, and we are going to do a cost of supply study in the coming year. How are we reducing our losses? Well, I think we are doing very well as a municipality. Our losses are at about 11%, but we have implemented a revenue enhancement program, which is running very well. And I'm pretty sure we'll see the results of that, where we are going into the informal communities and we are legalizing the illegal connections. We've had a lot of positive response to that. As stated earlier, the decline in consumption, I think I've justified that. It's an Eskom shortage and people using SSEG and other methods. What I can say is we have an item before council which will allow us to have customers use an increased maximum demand outside our peak hours. So we've got a proposal on the table where they can come to us, and as long as they stay out of our peak season and our peak times in those 3 months of the year, they can then expand their businesses. And we've got the technical measures in place, which, and I'm hoping that council will be able to approve that, and then that will hopefully release some, have a positive impact on our sales. And as I stated, we have got a revenue enhancement program running at the moment. So any non-paying customers are busy decreasing on a daily basis as we legalize them. I hope, Chairperson, that answers your questions, and if not, I'll take them.
Thank you to both yourselves, Mr. Mars and Mr. van der Heeven. I think you have answered our questions, and as indicated, you can supply further information to support your application. That would be welcomed. We'd like to thank you. And it is a pity that for an economy that needs jobs and needs growth, our growth is limited by, our ability, about the utilities' ability to supply. Hopefully that will be sorted out. And that vandalism issue, I don't know how, as a country, we solve that issue. It is truly unfortunate that for the limited investments that we do see, is that we destroy the little that we do have. That, for me, baffles me as well. Thank you for your presentations. That would be the Wurtzenberg municipality. Thank you for your presentations on behalf of NERSA. We will then move on to the last presenter of the day. We thank you. But any additional information as requested, please feel free to provide in the next few days to assist with the finalization of these applications. Thank you. All right, Mr. Dlamini, I see your hand is up. I did see your WhatsApp. If it's about the next presenter, I did see the WhatsApp.
Yes, Mr. Kumeta. Yes, Mr. Kumeta. I just wanted to also confirm that Mr. Nyankitaka has eventually joined the public hearings. I'm not certain if he will be able to make the presentation.
All right, you have indicated that the next presenter is Mr. Zamani Sithole.
Yes, Mr. Zamani Sithole is also from the same area as Mr. Nyankitaka from the Tembisa Community Forum, sir.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Can I maybe just get an indication from from either of them who is the one that's going to be presenting? Is that Mr. Nyankitaka or is it going to be Mr. Sithole?
Chairperson, this is Mario Nyankitaka speaking. If Zamani Sithole is in a position to go ahead and do the presentation, I'm more than willing to pass that responsibility to him, due to the fact that he is from the Tembisa Community Forum. I was standing just as a resident of Tembisa, but as a forum, they deal mostly with the municipality-related service delivery issues directly, and they feed back to the community. So if he is in a position to go ahead and take up that responsibility, by all means, he can continue, and I'll just be an observer.
Okay, can we not make a decision for you, colleagues? It's your opportunity to talk to us. So between yourselves, can we agree between yourselves who would be the most appropriate? So we don't make the decision for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Zamani, what do you feel? Do you feel that you can take up the responsibility of addressing the issues here in respect of the city of Ekurhuleni?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you so much, then. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. By the way, it said here Mr., but clear is Miss Mario.
It's not Miss, it's Mr. It is quite clear. So I'd
okay.
Let me just say that it is a mistake. It's okay.
All right, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
All right. Can I then have Mr. Zamani Sithole? Can I see your picture, sir?
Oh,
if you can switch on your video, just for the swearing part.
Can you see me?
Yes,
I'm
now we
actually
can clear.
charging, so I'm not on a chair. So if you can see me,
We can clearly see. We can clearly see.
Yeah.
It's only just for the swearing in.
All right.
Okay, our processes are quite clear. We do need to actually make sure that the evidence and information you give is under oath. So, would you object to taking an oath?
No, I'm not objecting.
Okay. In that particular case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the information or the evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
For the record, please state your name, the organization you are representing today, and your designation in it, please.
My name is Zamani Sithole. I represent Tembisa Community Forum, and I'm the chairperson.
Thank you. Okay. By the way, are you making a PowerPoint presentation or are you making an oral input?
Just an oral input.
All right. You've got 15 minutes for your oral input. If you can then proceed, please. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. My presentation, or rather input, is based on Eguruleni's presentation.
Sorry, Mr. Stwale, you are free to switch off the video now. So you don't have to stay on video. Thank you. We can proceed.
All right. Okay, so my presentation or oral input is based on Eguruleni's presentation on how they justify, or the justification on the increase of tariffs. Eguruleni stated that there was no dispute when they did public presentations. I can speak honestly on Tembisa that there was many disputes and protests to say that people were against the tariffs increase. And when they did come, they didn't come to actually present an opportunity for the community to decline or dispute or reject what they were saying. They came to present a decision that they had made. So when they came to present this decision, the two meetings that we attended as the forum deteriorated into chaos because people were not happy about the suggested increase, as it was above what the people wanted. In fact, the people do not want any increase at all, as they feel that they're already under a lot of pressure to pay. And we also submitted a memorandum, which then in turn became a petition. And we've been attending meetings with the city of Eguruleni to discuss why we are against these increases. So for Eguruleni to come and say that the public agreed to this is not true. And we'd just like to ask if it's a possibility for them to really relook into this particular statement, because for them to say that we agreed, or we did not reject the tariff increase is, how do you say, it's angering and inflammatory to say the least. So and in their presentation, I feel that they didn't give enough justification. They spoke of cutting off illegal connections and so forth, which is something that it's within their budget and does not justify why they would increase the tariffs. And also they did mention that there's different tariffs within Eguruleni, tariff A, tariff I, and so forth, because of how the electricity is supplied to different areas of Eguruleni. So I can speak on behalf of Tembisa that Tembisa is one of the townships that pay the tariffs. And as a paying township, I think we stand on solid grounds to say that we can talk on the issue of why we are against the increase, because we are under a lot of pressure and we're paying on one of the highest tariffs, which they were unable to justify in the meetings that we had with them as to why we are on this high tariff as a township. So as it stands, all of our issues stand unresolved. And in the meetings that we have attended, we still haven't gotten resolution as to what is the way forward. So for Eguruleni to say that there is no dispute is dishonest, to say the least. And for now, that's where I end my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Tola. It's sweet and to the point. We note your objection. Members of the panel, any questions for Mr. Setola? Mr. Mkiza?
Thanks, Chairperson. I don't necessarily have a question to Mr. Stolle, save to emphasize the need then for Eguruleni Metropolitan Municipality to then provide evidence to the fact that their assertion that all is well went well with their public consultation might be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Any further comments from members?
Yeah, Mario
Yes.
again, Chairperson.
Yes, Mario, if you can. Yes, we can have now.
Thank you so much. With regards to what Zamani Sithole has stated, it is to say that that we are not at all happy about the tariff increase. And if NESA proposed 9.6%, why is the City of Ekurhuleni taking up 9.61%?
Sorry, ma'am, I forgot. Because you spoke earlier, before we allow you to speak, I should have had you sworn in, sir. If you don't mind, because you are now making an input. Can I maybe just see your picture? Sorry, your
sure, no problem.
You can switch on your video, and we can swear in.
Let me just get to. Okay, let me just enable my video and let's see if I can. Let's see. Right. This is me, Anna.
I still
can I
don't see you? Oh, now I see you. Okay.
You see me now. Okay.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
But would you object to taking an oath?
Oh, the cap. Sorry.
No, taking an oath. No, the cap is
I'm
fine.
just a mess at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah, but would you object to taking an oath?
Okay. Not at all.
You don't not at all. Okay, then kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence or the information that you can give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, in that particular case, for the record, just please state your name, the organization, and your designation in it, please.
Okay, my name is Mario Nyangintaga, and I am a community member of the City of Ekurhuleni in respect of Tembisa.
All right. Now you can go ahead and make your input. You can switch off your video now, but you can go ahead and make your input. Apologies.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Right. Okay.
You
I don't know whether it's on and off or.
Yeah, you can switch off your video now. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Chairperson, I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty here with this camera.
It was off.
Okay. I guess that takes care of it.
Yes. Okay. Please proceed.
Okay. First and foremost, we do understand that it is said that we agreed to the tariff increase, but at the very same breath, we know that that is not true. And I guess one of my questions that I have with regards to this hearing is the significance of this hearing as to how do we. What difference does the community point of view make on the decision of the 9.61 price hike, right? Because I know for a fact that NESA is already, Eskom had proposed a 20% plus increase for their supply as opposed to demand, and NESA kept it at 9.61. So the municipality is now saying that they would like to have NESA said 9.6 as stipulated, and then COE, which is the City of Ekurhuleni, is pushing for 9.61, and not only towards electricity, also to a full potential of 11% when it comes to water and sanitation. And as it stands, we are standing at, in my own household, I'm sitting at a 5,000 bill with regards to the City of Ekurhuleni from January, where they had actually said that my water for December was around 3,500 rands. In February, they came back and said that no, they've adjusted the bill. I need to pay 1.7. And then it came back again. They said, no, you need to get into an agreement, a form of agreement to pay up the bill. And I did that because I needed electricity supply. But to me, it does not make sense as to why these are. You will always get excuses of saying that the water has, there's some sort of fault or some sort of leakage in your residential household or premises, and it never really gets to a point of resolution, but it ends up with us as a consumer having to get into loan sharks, having to borrow and lend money to actually meet up with the requirements of the municipality. And the fact that the amount that they're charging us is always fluctuating brings us back to the question as to why are we not paying a flat rate? And if Tembisa is one of the most expensive places to reside in and to live in as a habitat, why is it that the city of Ekurhuleni plays with our obedience? Time and time again, we go into these offices and we spend more time than anything else trying to find jobs, employment, and all of that, having to actually go ahead and approach the city of Ekurhuleni, which always leads to null and void resolutions, where we understand that we need to pay, and everybody does pay up at the end of the day, but there's a lot of dishonesty that is happening, and there's a lot of lack of service delivery in terms of the city of Ekurhuleni. So I think that the city of Ekurhuleni, if the members are still within this meeting, we would appeal to you to please come back to us and really speak to us and start taking up your responsibilities as you are supposed to, instead of oppressing us and also giving us runarounds when we are trying to actually, we have COVID-19 times right now, we have unemployment. How are you expecting us to pay all of these bills when we don't even have jobs? Don't tell us about the indigence policy, because that just does not make sense as well, because a whole lot of people are still complaining about the indigence policy and their implementations and their cancellation thereof. So let me see. I had another point that I wanted to make in the case of the municipality has introduced load shedding. Okay, we know that load shedding it's a national thing. Then they further applied load reduction. So which means whatever we're paying for this prepaid electricity is still going to be cut off as they please. So we are stuck between a hard place and a rock here. We're not saying that we don't want to pay our bills and take responsibility for them. We do. We have done so more, for over the years. And we understand that some parts of the city of Ekurhuleni have flat rates that were applied, and we keep on paying 7,000, close to 10,000 rands, and we still don't get any way forward for many years now. So I think that the city of Ekurhuleni is very comfortable in playing with our obedience, and it has to come to a standstill now, because we are going to be forced to retaliate against this. And we are sitting at a place where we are now really uncomfortable. We understand the supply and demand perspective as far as the businesses and their budgets and so forth, but it is not fair towards a regular consumer to be paying enormous bills when they can't even keep their livelihoods going at this point in time, since 2019 coming into 2022. We do see that the Cape Town municipality is capping its rate tariffs are pretty low. I think that it still also comes back to the question of saying that these people are the municipality is in tune and in tandem with its consumers. Over and above the city of Ekurhuleni, who want exorbitant amounts from us, and we don't even know how we're even going to make those payments and how to meet up with their standards. There's a lot of unfairness here, and we are saying that the city of Ekurhuleni will need to now start taking up the responsibility of being fair and taking due diligence when it comes to us as their consumers, because we do not want to resort to violence in order for us to be able to be heard. We have had meetings through the community, Tembisa Community Forum, Forum, that has gone ahead and tried to open a dialogue and have the community stand still while they have talks and lines of communications open, but still we are getting a runaround. Now, this is not okay, and we do disapprove of this tariff increase, and we did not go ahead and consent to it. With all these said, I'd like to stand down now and really thank everybody for having us here today, because it will now reveal the truth of the city of Ekurhuleni at large. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much for your input. We had actually opened up we had thought that the input from the side was complete and open up the engagements from the panel. But thank you for your inputs, and our request will be, because we don't have anything in writing from yourselves, that both yourself, Mr. Tolle, and yourself, Mario, if we can actually get, it would be very useful for our decision if you can send something to us in writing. And we do believe that the city of Ekurhuleni is listening as well. And for in terms of the correctness of the information they may have provided, they would need to have to validate that. So yeah, we thank you for your input. But can I recognize Advocate Sithole for your input, ma'am? Thank you.
Sorry, Chairperson, before she goes on, can I please ask as to what your turnaround time is for this submission?
Look, because of the timelines, ordinarily we give 7 days, but because of the shortness of the time to consider these applications,
yes,
we would appreciate 3 days, but you do have your 7 days. But please do send us something within the 7 days.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, maybe I can just sum up my question that I wanted to pose to the representative of the Tembisa community. It should be that they should also, in their presentation, please indicate what are the costs that they believe the municipality should include in their tariff application, because I was going to ask them that the municipality did give an indication in their presentation that they will be replacing some of the meters that are 10 years old. And I wanted to ask them as community representatives, would they say that this particular cost is justifiable to be included in the costs, to be considered as a cost for the provision of electricity that needs to be taken into account by the municipality in their tariff application or not? And also just to give us a view of whether the community members have raised issues or complaints regarding the current meters. Chair, this can be included in their written response. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate. Can I also further ask that in terms of the written response, if you can also add, perhaps you indicated, I think, Mr. Tolle, that you are, Mr. Tolle, that you are charged on a very high rate. So if it would be useful to indicate in terms of the tariff structure, the actual tariff that the Tembisa community is actually being charged at, so that we can have a, for instance, if one looks at the city of Ekurhuleni tariff structure, if you could indicate which tariff, tariff A, B, C, or D, or whatever that tariff that you are being charged at, that would be useful as well in that written response. You don't have to actually respond to it now, but I'm not too sure whether you want to provide any response at this stage, verbal. By the way, as I indicated earlier, I see a hand again from Tembisa Community Forum. But if it's anybody else other than Mr. Sithole, I would need to actually swear the person in. But I'm assuming that would be Mr. Sithole responding. Mr. Sithole?
Yes, it is me.
Okay. Please do respond to the questions that you can, but we'll then request that you actually provide us something in writing within 7 days.
Okay, as we've been given the opportunity to provide it in writing, it gives us time to get more specifics, right? And we will do so rather in writing, because to respond now is more of an emotional reaction instead of one that is informed, because we were very upset with what municipality presented. So rather we take the opportunity to present it in writing and have more clear and concise information to put forward.
Thank you. That would be very appreciated. So it will go into it will assist the team as it considers this application before a decision is made by the energy regulator. Members of the panel, colleagues, stakeholders, both who are on call here and those that are following us on all of our other NERSA platforms, we'd like to thank you for a good engagement. We've had an opportunity to hear the side of the municipality. It's a pity that we only just had the side of one consumer. It would be useful if we had a bit more of the consumers, at least even responding to the question that is posed, that says, firstly, were you consulted? And if so, what is your view as the members of the consumers of this particular product? That would have been useful. It's useful that at least in the case of the city of Ekurhuleni, we did have input from the consumer side, but it would have been much more useful if we had a broader input from other consumers as well. But thank you for this engagement, and that was the Tembisa residents and the Tembisa Community Forum were the last presenter of the day.